going to do a pregame and postgame today. It's Hogvillenet YouTube. We're live. I've invited everybody in to really kind of not just look at this last game in Maui as Arkansas tries to get to 2-1, playing its second consecutive ranked team when we're talking about San Diego State. We're going to preview that game, but I also want to get into looking at what's transpired so far in Maui, because Arkansas wraps it up tonight. It's the late game. It's the third place game between the Razorbacks and the Aztecs. And again, I think when I look at this situation for Arkansas, there's multiple talking points right now going into the game. I'm going to start with something you may or may not know. You've probably figured it out by now, but Nick Smith Jr., I've been saying for a while, did not expect him to play in this event. And then it's going to be, there's a sweet spot sometime after Arkansas gets back home, one more game in November, getting into early December. I think there's a spot in there where we see a Nick Smith return. I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. There's a lot of rumors out there. But again, he's at a point physically that I think, there's been temptation to play him in Maui. But I think cooler heads have prevailed in terms of making sure that he's fully ready. There's some clips out there of him being animated during games, jumping off the bench, dunking in pregame, some of that stuff. But I think he's close. He will not play tonight. Something crazy would have to happen for that to happen. So Nick Smith is out, but I think Arkansas has been impressive. When you look at what the Razorbacks have done without him, we're going to talk some more about that and what might happen when he gets back and we start talking rotation. But since he's not playing tonight, and since that means no Maui, let's focus on the guys that are playing. Let's look at a guy like, just kind of reviewing some things, because I want to get into the officiating in the previous game. We know the Razorbacks had to turn the page quickly and focus on San Diego State, but we're fans and we're media and we're folks that can spend some time talking about that and rehashing it. I don't know that the team can afford to do that against a quality opponent. I don't think it can, but we can. And so we're going to. So we're going to focus on what players have done at this point as we look ahead to this last game. And then when Arkansas gets back to Fayetteville, we're going to talk about what happened against Creighton, which I think, Razorback fans and you saw some national folks chime in. There's some legitimate beef there with the way that game was called in the second half. Creighton ends up shooting 28 free throws in the second half. Here's a team that averages about half that many per game coming in, shooting 28 free throws. Arkansas takes its first lead on a deep Ricky Council three about 4 minutes into that second half. From that point forward, 25 of those 28 attempts Creighton gets in the last 16 minutes. So you start to kind of peel it back. I'm not going to accuse the officiating crew of intentionally loading it up for the Blue Jays to get to the foul line, but I am going to say that is bizarre. It is an unusual rate of fouls and free throw shooting. Once Arkansas took that first lead, 46-45, the Razorbacks continue to have success scoring on one end, getting to the basket and making baskets. I thought defensively they were really good, not only of limiting how many attempts Creighton got from the three-point line after a 5 of 10 first half for the Blue Jays. They only shot 2 of 4 in the second half, but Arkansas was starting to force turnovers. And so how did Creighton stay in the game? The whistles. They were 8 of 8 at the line in a stretch where Arkansas, after they took the first lead, Creighton seemed to match Arkansas every time by free throws. Some of those very questionable calls. You had an intentional flagrant one on Devo Davis in there that was probably, out of all of the calls, maybe the right one. But it kept Creighton within a one-possession deficit. I thought Arkansas, had it gotten over, you always talk about can't get over the hump and grab a lead. This was a situation where Arkansas got leads but couldn't get over the hump and extend beyond one possession, beyond a score. And that was, to me, that was really what kept Creighton off the ropes. And there were a lot of whistles that team benefited. I went through some of that. There was still a mysterious technical foul. I've got the backstory on that. I'm not going to go into specifics. But I can tell you that the Arkansas coaching staff, it's still a mystery as to how and why that happened. Again, Arkansas holding an advantage at the point where, free throws are coming now after a technical foul call. You also, some very questionable calls when you look at defensive plays by Devo Davis, Jordan Walsh, Trevon Brazile. We know he racked up several. Anthony Black out on the perimeter. You look at both ends of the floor, there's no guarantee that games are going to be officiated exactly evenly. That's not what this is about. But sometimes the eye tests tell you something's wrong. On one end, Arkansas, we know this is a team that drives a lot to the basket. A lot of contact. Not as many whistles on that end. Minimal contact at the other end often, and that resulted in whistles. Not only did Creighton get to the to the 1-1 really early in the second half. It got to the double bonus with about 12 minutes to play. That's typically unheard of, especially a good defensive team like Arkansas. And you got to call it both ways, so it's going to sound like a crying homer. But when I go back and examine statistically what Creighton was as a free throw team and how many attempts it gets per game, the style that it plays, that all factors into that. And I felt like there was a lot of bell out there to keep that team hanging in that game. But you got to give Arkansas credit, too, for hanging in there and not letting that be such a distraction that it fell apart and folded. It didn't. Arkansas gave itself a chance down the wire. One more thing I'm going to mention, there was a lane violation on an Anthony Black made free throw that would have cut a deficit late in the game, about 29 seconds left, down to 2 instead of 3. He'd made the first free throw. It might have been the right call, but here's the thing. You can call that literally on every single free throw trip through any game. And it was just a weird time to do that, because it could be called against either team at any point in time in the game. And they do it then. Had he make that free throw, there were 2 more times inside the last 19 seconds where Arkansas scored to pull within 1. So that forfeited made free throw was huge. So again, it sounds like excuse making, but I think Arkansas has some legitimate beef coming out of that game as a team. The good news again is we're going to move past it. I wanted to go through some of that. I'm going to get to comments here in a little bit later, but I wanted to go through some of that simply because if it sounds like so loser, so be it. We've seen Arkansas in the past, whether it's football, basketball, have been in situations like this, and there are valid concerns. And so to ignore them and to in the pretense of not sounding like a homer, I think that's an injustice. Maybe that's even bigger than bringing it up. So I wanted to go through some of that. Some of you may have some other things that you want to bring to bear on that, but those were some of the things that stood out to me. Again, I thought Arkansas, when you look at the shooting percentages that Creighton enjoyed, some of that was on Arkansas. Some of that was on a really good offensive Creighton team, by the way, that lost by 2 points in another really interesting battle today against Arizona, the 14th ranked Wildcats winning the Maui Invitational. Arkansas is now in the 3rd place game against the other ranked team, San Diego State. But again, I think Arkansas gets back to defense now. I think that's going to be the focus. We're going to talk more about this matchup. But I think taken away from Creighton, Arkansas had its chances to win. It didn't fold when it was down by 12 points and finished the first half to give itself a chance. And now I think moving forward, that's what you key on going into tonight. You're not going to, waller in the fact that, about the free throw disparities any longer than the coaching staff did it before they went to bed. So again, keep an eye on Arkansas. But the one thing about San Diego State, we're going to go through some of the numbers, but this is a good free throw shooting team in terms of, getting to the line, converting right around 75%. There's some other areas where this team's obviously, to me, not as good as some of the other teams offensively in the field. But we know Arkansas used that blueprint of getting to the free throw line and playing blue-collar basketball last season, 2 seasons ago somewhat, last season for sure. And so you can win a lot of games doing that when you're not the best shooting team. And I think San Diego State, where Arkansas is checking up short in those areas, that's a strength of that team. And so for the Razorbacks and their coaching staff, you've got that to worry about on top of, a free throw attempt debacle last night. Arkansas consistently has not been the kind of team that we thought it would be getting to the line. That's probably a weakness. Arkansas has been dominant points in the paint overall this year. That was a draw last night against Creighton, so maybe there's one more negative there. But Arkansas won the turnover battle, 1 points off turnovers, 1 second chance points, much better on the offensive glass. These are the kind of things Arkansas can turn to, and as the bigger team, as the more athletic team tonight, get back to that defensive resume, get back to holding a team, if you can, below 40% field goal shooting. Keep it down in the low 30s on threes. Coming into this, San Diego State's right at and in the mid 30s, and they make about 7 per game. So, they're not making a huge volume, but you want to see if you can, you're not as worried much about volume right now as you are efficiency. You might want that team jacking up threes because they can't get inside the teeth of your defense, and then you want to do a good job defending it. Arkansas gets back to having a positional size advantage everywhere. That's going to be the case most games. I think one of the biggest things tonight when you look at San Diego State, this is a team, unlike Creighton, that goes 9 deep. They're going to play 9 guys, 9 that average 15 minutes or more per game. Nobody averaging 30. Now, that can change a little bit tonight based on the grind of this game. But I do think there's going to be more of Arkansas's playing its 3rd game in 3 days. If you looked at it last night, the Mitchell twins split 16 minutes. The other 5, and we know who they are, Anthony Black, Ricky Council, Trevon Brazile, who I thought was outstanding in the second half. We'll talk more about that. But Jordan Walsh and Devo Davis really played the heavy minutes. The second half, Arkansas had really drilled down to a 5 rotation. So we'll see what impact that has on legs and wind. And Musselman keeps talking about how pleased he is with the team's conditioning. We're going to find out a little bit about that because San Diego State, again, will use its bench. I think Arkansas has an advantage in this game. I believe if Arkansas is not suffering a hangover from that loss, just yesterday, if they're beyond that and focused in this game, I think Arkansas wins this game. I think it's the better team. But that's why you play them, because you don't know what effects Arkansas has on that, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally. That was a tough one, especially, again, there was a lot of controversy in there. And so sometimes that can weigh. This is Eric Musselman's job, by the way, to get his players not to focus on that. But I look at Anthony Black doing things we didn't think he could do. Maybe this or even this early in the season, if ever, when you start looking at him taking and making threes, scoring in a variety of ways. I mean, the guy's averaging 26 points a game in Maui. He's hit that number twice, 6 assists. He's on the glass, 3.5 rebounds. He's getting steals, 2 steals per game. His shooting splits are crazy good. And that includes free throw line, 3-point shooting and twos. I think when you look at what he's done, picking up the slack without a Nick Smith Jr., who everybody believes is a superstar in college before he's done it, and I believe he will be. So is Anthony Black, though. He's showing that on big national stage. Let's see what he does tonight in concert with guys like Ricky Council the fourth, who I think has been, probably a little bit under the talking points because of Anthony Black, but he's been outstanding. This guy's come to play. He's done a variety of things in the mid-range game, starting to hit threes, in addition to his spectacular finish and tough finishes at the basket, and doing a few other things as well. And I look at Trevon Brazile. I used the word last night, thawing out, in my post-game analysis, because I thought he finally did. He got a lob dunk from AB to end the first half. That was his first basket in Maui. 3 halves of basketball. He finally gets on the board in the second half. He really helped Arkansas exchange heavyweight punches because they needed that third guy to step up. Devo Davis, who I think is still undervalued, playing a lot of minutes. People can look at that flagrant 1 foul. He did miss a 3 late. He hit 2 big free throws, though, and this is a team that doesn't necessarily shoot him that well to keep Arkansas in it. But he's tough defensively, and I think he may be the one that gets the start. He's going to start, but I think he may be the first one to guard Trammell, the 5'10" guard for San Diego State that leads that team. Again, you're talking top 9 rotation for San Diego State. 7 of those guys are seniors. 2 of them are juniors. This is a veteran team. So Arkansas gets another veteran lineup. But I think Devo Davis as a veteran might get that matchup. We've seen Anthony Black defend smaller guards. He did it in Mexico for Team USA. He's done it in other scenarios in Europe when Arkansas had the exhibition games. So I won't be surprised if he's guarding the lead guard and starting out that way. But I think Arkansas is going to throw different looks because even though they run a tighter rotation, there's versatility within that lineup, even if you're only going 6 or 7 deep. Maybe Musselman's able to expand and stretch the rotation a little bit tonight based on this matchup, something else to look at. But I think Arkansas comes to this, to me, should be the favorite based on a normal set of circumstances, even without Nick Smith Jr. I think what could be at play is any hangover from what happened in the game last night. But I think Musselman and his staff, again, I'll repeat it, it's their job to get their guys' heads right. It's their job to be prepared. And nobody in the business, I don't think, does as good a job as that staff does, conveying what needs to be done and then making sure their team follows through. But they are human, so we'll see. Sometimes people, despite all the preparation, still are feeling the effects of stuff. And this is, most teams aren't used to playing 3 games in 3 days. And when you don't typically run a deep lineup out there, not in and not out, those are things, no matter how prepared you are, that potentially could catch up to you. We don't know that it will. We just need to see that play out. But I find all these matchups fascinating because Arkansas now is playing back-to-back ranked teams for the first time under Eric Musselman in non-conference play. That's a big deal. And you're getting these in November. Arkansas wins tonight. The NCAA net rankings won't come out for a while, but you can bet if Arkansas wins tonight, they're not only 1-1 against ranked teams, but they're probably going to be 1-1 in quad 1 games, when we look back at what they did in November. And that's, those are the kind of resume wins and opportunities that you want even this early, because it's just as important if you accomplish that in November as it is in March. And that's, That's the reality of it. And so you want these early games. People say, well, these games early, they don't matter. In some cases, in some aspects, that may be true. But for resume, they absolutely do matter. Okay, so we went through some of that. I've talked about Nick Smith's not going to play. We know that Anthony Black, again, has been a star so far. I won't say that's a surprise. I think some of what's made him a star in this event has been a bit surprising, but I'm not surprised that he's impacted games. He's a winner. He's elite defensively. I didn't talk about that. What a breakout, if you want to call it a breakout, for a guy that was already projected first round and in some lottery projections. By the way, a new lottery projection came out from Bleacher Report. Jonathan Wasserman, and I tweeted this earlier today, has 5 Razorbacks in his 2-round projection. Starts with Nick Smith at number 4. You've got Anthony Black at number 6. He's moved up. Coming in, and I'll call it coming in third, Trevon Brazile at number 34. So early second round. That's the pick that Jalen Williams went last year, early second round to the Thunder. Then after that, you've got Jordan Walsh at 39, Ricky Council the fourth at number 44. So if you look, it's a 60-player draft unless teams have to forfeit for getting in trouble with the NBA. But if you look at, 5 Hogs projected in the top 44, that's a big deal. That's the kind of stuff you talk about with Kentucky and Duke and some of these other programs. Not many. So this tells you the recruiting level right now and why you expect the on-court results, even in November, to go Arkansas's way. So we'll see what happens tonight. I see a few comments. I don't know who else tuned in. I'm going to lean in here and see if I can answer some of these. But again, I want to say that, going back, just one more point I want to make about the officiating. One thing we do have to remember, Arkansas has not been good at generating free throw attempts. Not when you look back at Europe, not when you looked at the exhibition season, and not so far this season. So even though that second half against Creighton, there's a lot of questionable stuff there, it doesn't remove the fact from Arkansas's shoulders that it needs to get better at that. Under Musman last year, it was the number 1 team in the country in free throws attempted, free throws made, always at a really strong percentage as well, efficient. And then if you look back at his first 3 seasons, the other teams trended really, really elite, top 10 in a lot of those categories. So this team being this far down, even though it's so early, when you look at the athleticism, length, size, all these things, you're thinking this is a team that's going to get to the free throw line. So they got to figure some of that out, because against some of these teams like last night, you're going to be ranked teams and quad 1 opportunities. You're going to be in tight games late, and that's where the free throw line is so important. Yeah. Let's see. Well, I had some comments come up and then they fade off. So I guess I missed some there. I need to pay a little bit better attention to that. I'm excited about the post game tonight, because we're going to not only reflect on what Arkansas did in this game, but we're going to reflect on what it means moving forward. We're going to look ahead and talk about what it means moving forward, because Arkansas may not have another quad win opportunity until it gets into league play. But there will be some tests. Obviously, a neutral site test against Oklahoma and Tulsa. So we're going to go through some of that stuff. Again, it's Hogvillenet YouTube. We're live. Hogville.net is where our work is published. When you talk about written content, it's Dudley Dawson, Otis Kirk. These guys covering football, baseball, other sports now. We're really kind of casting that wide net as we expand what you can get in Hogvillenet. And then the Hogvillenet YouTube Live is a big part of what we're doing, both pre-game and post-game. So I hope this is content that everybody appreciates, because nothing's better than getting quality for free. Now, you'll determine whether it's quality or not, but I can tell you it's free for sure. And we love the opportunities, by the way, to interact. And so I've dropped the ball a little bit on the interaction, because the comments have faded in and out on me really quickly before I could see them. But Arkansas tipping tonight at 9 o'clock, I think the extra time, just a little bit extra time, helps Arkansas prepare a little bit, maybe rest a little bit. I think any anxiety they might have had over how things went, it's a cooling down from that. So maybe the late start, championship games out of the way, this will be the last game. Maybe the late start benefits the team. But I think Arkansas is in for success tonight if it's not hungover. I keep using that word, not literally hungover, but sometimes drama in a game can take away your attention and focus, and you can dwell on things. Also, I've said it so many times already just in this segment. I think Eric Musman and his staff won't let that happen. And I do believe Arkansas finds a way to win tonight. I may be having to, eat my words later, and obviously Arkansas will be going back to Fayetteville with its tail between its legs if it drops 2 in a row against ranked teams, because those are huge opportunities. But it's also not a death knell. We've seen Eric Musselman teams in the past struggle against quality. Usually it's mid schedule, late December, early January, getting into league play. So this getting some lumps out of the way isn't the worst thing if it's still in November, because you got a lot of season ahead. So there's one way to look at it, not trying to make excuses preemptively if they lose, but I think we got to have a sense of reality as well. Once again, it's Hogvillenet YouTube Live. You go to hogville.net for football, basketball, baseball, every sport that you can think of at the University of Arkansas. It's covered, and the staff does a really good job when you start talking about Otis Kirk, who's a veteran, Dudley Dawson, veteran. We've got an outstanding photographer in John James, who's done a wonderful job at games for us. So it's a really, really good team effort. And I think it's enhanced what we've been already doing. It's gotten even better in the last year. And I love these YouTube opportunities for everybody, because, again, this is a different way for us to interact, which, again, I'll say I haven't done the best interacting tonight because the comments have kind of faded quickly as I see them come up on my screen. All right, so Arkansas's now, we're less than an hour away from expected tip time. We've spent about 20 minutes on the pregame. I think, again, when you watch this game tonight, I'm going to give you just a handful of things maybe to pay attention to. Individually, I think we're going to see consistency out of guys like Black, Council, but do we see it from Trevon Brazile? Do we see any more guys emerge from the front line? So far, the Mitchells have been the names we've talked about outside of Brazile in this tournament. Does a guy like Jalen Graham help Arkansas tonight? Does Kamani Johnson make an appearance? We haven't seen that. I think the other thing we're looking forward to is Arkansas get back to its defensive ways. I think this is probably the biggest talking point for Musselman coming into this. So I would say, that's something to pay attention to. I mentioned and talked about free throws. Let's see if Arkansas does a better job tonight of having a balance there, because this is a pretty good free throw shooting team when you talk about attempts and efficiency in San Diego State. It just is. And Arkansas, I said it, hasn't been as good. Let's also, pay attention to turnovers once again. Arkansas did a great job against Creighton. Both teams coming in tonight averaged double digits in steals. Arkansas is probably a little better overall forcing turnovers, but both teams are getting a lot of steals. And what that tells you is San Diego State, if they're getting 10-plus steals a game, that means they're also getting a lot of deflections, disruptive defensively. You're talking about a veteran team again, and so they know their way around the block. You look at Jaden Ledee inside. There's some size there. Mensah, who comes off, that 6'10" and is going to play with some size. This is not his team that is as big as Arkansas. Let's see, Jalen Saint would be playing tonight. Where's the play from AB come from? That's a great question. We've been writing about it at hogville.net. So our written content, you can go in there and kind of read through some of the stuff that we talk about. We've talked about a lot of it in recruiting when we were looking at him before he was even a Razorback and what the strengths of his game are. You can peel back through all of that, and nowhere does it talk about look for Anthony Black to be a 20-plus point game scorer in November. Yeah, so, even covering this team, sometimes there are things that we just don't see, and we don't see, even in the near future as even being possible. I'm not going to lie about that and say, well, I knew this was going to happen. I didn't. He's a great player. I knew he could be elite defensively. I know he can be elite as a facilitator. He checks a lot of boxes, big rebounder, makes smart plays, savvy guy. I thought he would be an opportunistic scorer. I thought he would be a guy that, might have some nights where it's 12 to 15 points, maybe some other games where it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. And, his average is maybe, 6, 7, 8 points. I didn't see this coming. And I don't know if anybody did that covers the Razorbacks or that covered him through his career before he got to college. But I will say the NBA scouts are aware of it. I can promise you that because I've heard from a couple of them asking me, did I see it coming? So you got the question here. I've had couple of scouts ask me that already. So I think, is he going to be a guy that's going to go out and get 20 plus tonight? We're about to find out. I don't know that I'm going to believe that that's something he can do or will do every night, but we know now he's capable of it. He showed a lot of nuance and savvy in some of the things he did offensively. Disappearance of Kamani Johnson has been a surprise. I'm not that surprised by it, honestly. Musselman went out in the spring in the portal. He hit the portal with intentions to bring in guys with more length, more size, athleticism. Kamani Johnson's a warrior. He's undersized. He's a below the rim guy. You know what you're getting with him. You're going to get effort. He's going to battle on the glass, especially the offensive end. He's a guy that can help you get back to the free throw line. That's something that Nick Smith also does. He draws a lot of fouls and gets to the line. So those may be two factors that are kind of keeping Arkansas's numbers down. But sometimes you have to trade things off. Kamani's not going to defend the rim like the other players can. He's not going to block shots or alter shots as much. He is going to throw his weight around. He picks up fouls. That's another thing. He'll pick up some fouls. But I think he's a positive for the Razorbacks. He's going to help this team. So far, we can call it a disappearance, but I think Musman has a feel for what he's doing, why he's doing it, and what he wants to do. And later on, we know he's not afraid to tweak lineups, and Kamani could very well be a part of something like that later. I think a lot, too, tonight could change. We may see him play tonight. He could do it consistently, I have no doubt. 3 times in 3 days, a stupid ask, though. Yeah, that's a tough ask, but, defenses have been playing off of him. They've sagged off of him. They've dared him to shoot. He made Louisville pay for that. In a sense, he made Creighton pay for it. He didn't hit his first 3 till 2 seconds left, but he only took 3. So 33%, you'll take that from Anthony Black, low volume. But look, he's scoring putback dunks in transition, knifing through the defense. He had a little floater that went in. He went off the glass. He's played an excellent two-man game where now the defense has to account for his drives. They don't have to just continue to play off even when he gets closer, knowing he wants to pass. They've got to worry about that finish. When they do that, somebody's open. He kicked out to Javon Brazile. Ricky Council brings that quality too. We know Nick Smith does. And so now you got 3 guys. You're playing Russian roulette defensively every time they get into two-man game or get downhill, because now they're picking and choosing. It's not just one guy you got to worry about. There's 3. And I think the other thing is, I mentioned looking tonight at the turnover game. We'll keep an eye on the three-point shooting game. These are not killer three-point shooting teams, either one of them. San Diego State's been a little more efficient. And again, we talk about steals and defense, and this could be one of those blue-collar grind games. I think Arkansas is probably the better rebounding team. Not much, but just a little bit. There's just different facets of the game that when we come back post-game, we may have talking points that we haven't touched on right now because games play out in their own way. Matchups sometimes are interesting. You look at them on paper, you look at them statistically. Anybody can sit in front of a camera and talk about the stats, advanced stats, go deep with all of that. Sometimes those things are misleading because when you get on the court, there's other things at play, and sometimes the matchups just dictate things work out a little differently. So, you want to go through some of that stuff. You want to bring it to fans' attention, but you also want to pay attention to what actually happens. Will we ever get a pure shooter on the team? I think a guy like Joseph Pinion is a shooter. He can be a big time shooter. I think even at this level, he's got to get on the court. He's got to get better defensively. You see Arkansas brings him in at the end of a game last night with a chance maybe to get the ball to him or at least use him as a decoy. But he's a guy that when you're down in the situation Arkansas was in, that even now Musman turned to him. And so, no, is he in the rotation? Absolutely not right now. But he's a guy that I think can help the program later. We're so far away from most of this season still that we don't know how things will play out and what Musman will feel like he needs to do to tweak that lineup. We just know in the past he's not been afraid to do that. And guys who were not in his top 7-8 rotation were brought in. And that started to change things. It's Hogvillenet, YouTube Live. Feel like Muss will have to do that in the portal. Yeah. You know what? Two signees in the 2023 class, both of them 5 stars. One's a big man, one's a point guard. Both of them are outstanding players. 3-point shooting with high volume and efficiency is not either one of their games. And I think Arkansas will look in the portal for shooting in this next recruiting cycle. I think that'll be part and parcel of what Arkansas and Musman does in that portal. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's not going to help them tonight. But, again, I want to remind everybody, I know I throw it out here a lot, but I always think it's worth saying it, as much as I have to, because some of you may not be familiar with the work at Hogvillenet. It's easier to jump on YouTube live and watch us. That's easier to do. But there's some really good work. I look at a guy like Otis Kirk who puts out a ton of content, covers a lot of stuff, doesn't miss a beat. He's been doing that forever. Dudley Dawson, who brings unique things to the table. I love the work that he does. covering the opposing team. Sometimes we forget there's a story there. Opposition, coaches, what they think about the Razorbacks. What effect did the Hogs have on their team? The guys that are covering the beat on the front part of it are talking more about the Razorbacks. I think perspective, you want 360-degree perspective. And so I think the team does that in various ways. So I always want to talk it up when I get the chance to, because being part of Hogville.net, I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of the work that everybody does. I mentioned our new photographer, John D. James. This guy, he's a stud with the camera. The guy gets some really good shots, and it's really enhanced the work that we do. So again, they've done such a good job as a team with football. It wraps up the regular season against, obviously at Missouri, on Friday, and then there'll be a bowl game. So you're going to get a lot more great football coverage, including YouTube Lives, which they've done an outstanding job with all season. Pinion is a pure shooter, in my opinion. Just needs some playing time. Yeah, you can't prove it unless you're playing. I agree. I've been a part of Hogville since 2006. Thank you. That's a great comment. Let's see. Tonight will be a good test. Going to be tough to bounce back from a game like that. I keep saying that. It gets to be a broken record. I want talking points, and I think hangover, I use that word as the one thing I really think that could, even if Arkansas, you don't want to even be in a situation against a really good veteran team that's going to take advantage if you're not ready and if you come out sluggish, and you don't have to fight your way back in. Arkansas doesn't want that uphill battle. If anything, if it's a grind game and it's back and forth, you prefer that. Even if you can't extend and get a huge lead, we've seen Musselman teams in the past. They typically win that way against good teams. Creighton. So ask Creighton. Creighton today was always really playing from behind, and they fought valiantly. I'm going to give Creighton credit. Arizona's a really good team, the top offensive team in the country coming into this event, and Creighton hung in there with Arizona. If you look at the teams in this field, you can make a case that there are 4 or 5 teams that have, when you look at what they bring to the table, have a chance to get to the Sweet 16 months from now, just based on what you're seeing now. That tells you it's a strong field. There may be 2 or 3 teams that can run further than a Sweet 16, maybe get to that third weekend and get to a Final Four. I think Arkansas has one of those teams. I would say Arizona and Creighton probably do. Again, lots going to happen. We're going to see how injuries play out. Sometimes teams are up and down. They look great for a while, and then they typically fall. Sometimes they fall and slide and they don't recover. Arkansas has been really good at having their downward spirals in the middle of the year. And not only do they get the ship righted, but they don't just kind of clunk along after they figure things out. They've blasted off. I mean, you remember that basically record run that Arkansas had in SEC games after starting really slow, 2-4 in league play 2 years ago. Last year, again, something similar. And so, now the setup's different. Arkansas is scheduled much tougher in non-conference. The conference schedule, which they don't have control over, is the toughest they've had under Musselman. So you mash it together. This is going to be a wild ride, but Arkansas also has more talent with future pros on the team than it's ever had. So our little brains are trying to fathom and get unscrambled to figure out, how is this all going to play out? When's Nick getting back? What does that do? We can talk about that. I think when Nick gets back, we know that's going to impact roles and minutes and rotation. I think a guy like Devo Davis, we may see him go back to a 6-man role. He's been valuable to Arkansas in back-to-back Elite Eight runs. He's valuable what they're doing defensively. He can be a spark offensively. He's one of those guys that, to me, Arkansas needs, but he may go back to a 6-man role. We may see, a shift in primary ball handling duties at times. It may not just be Ricky Council and Anthony Black and sometimes Devo. I think that's obvious. Nick Smith's too good with the ball in his hands. Let's see. I saw part of that comment. You like the schedule's tough. I do too. I think fans should always want that. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I can't completely fault Musselman for the way he structured Arkansas' schedule in the past. I actually called it out on Twitter a couple of years ago, not just because the schedule was soft, but I felt like his best players weren't playing enough against a soft schedule, even though they were young. I didn't think they were ready when the big hammer started swinging against Missouri and some of these ranked SEC teams. They got out to 2-4, but at the same time, Arkansas structured that schedule in a way where they landed gently in their net rankings, and they didn't risk any losses that might have hurt them, and it kind of set them up to develop and come together and build that chemistry. So when they did start playing the big quad one games, they went on a run. So it worked out great. Didn't work out every game in the middle there, but it ended up ultimately, which is what matters, working out great. But I like these schedules. I prefer Arkansas to get down and dirty against some of these big heavy hitters. This is what you want to do in college basketball. If you're going to say we're running with the big blue bloods, Arkansas is still not scheduling like Duke and Kentucky, but this is a step up. And the league now is so tough. Arkansas right now is the highest ranked team. That could change and be multiple teams throughout the year. Certainly, Arkansas better win tonight if it wants to have a chance to stay in that top 10 and be the top rated team in the league. And it's so early now, all that stuff really doesn't matter. But when you're building a program that's recruiting at the level Arkansas is, that's had finishes to seasons, second halves of seasons, you want to now say, look, we scheduled tougher. The SEC schedule was as tough as it's been for us, and we backed up a lot of stuff along the way. And again, you're back-to-back ranked opponents this early in the year. Doesn't matter when it is. Musselman hasn't had Arkansas team play back-to-back ranked opponents in non-conference play until now. This is a good thing. And so, we'll see what Arkansas does with it tonight. There's going to be some happy Turkey Day fans if Arkansas wins, and there might be some people that, have a little indigestion after what happened with Creighton. If they lose tonight going into Thursday, I can tell you I'm going to celebrate the holiday regardless. But I hope we'll have fun tonight in the post game. And the best way to do that is for Arkansas to take care of business. And just looking ahead of it, I don't see how fans can't be excited about Razorback basketball in November, even though football season's not over. Because, again, you got multiple pros on this team playing this schedule. It's just fun every night. The Arkansas last night, it wasn't just that they found the resolve to get back in that game after what happened at Texas in an exhibition. That was impressive enough against that team. But there were so many wow plays and moments. And sometimes your jaw drops and you're thinking, when was the last Arkansas team that there wasn't maybe every 5 years one guy that could do some of the highlight reel stuff we see? Maybe one. They got multiple on one team. That's why you see these mock drafts with 5 Razorbacks in them. It's exciting. It's an exciting brand of basketball. You've got Musselman on the sidelines. People, some people were taking shots last night at his antics, and not me. I mean, this is who he is. This is part of what fuels him, part of what makes him a great coach. I think he's one of the great coaches in college basketball right now. I think the sample size is big enough to say that. And so I think things are rolling for this program again. I lived through the 80s and 90s when Eddie Sutton and Nolan Richardson were elite coaches in college basketball and had Arkansas really as a top 10 program when you look at a 25-year span, bridging parts of 4 decades. Arkansas feels like that again. I remember the feeling. I can sense it again. I love this team. They fight like hell, got a lot of heart. Yeah, exactly. Look, I was at that Texas game. It wasn't televised. We reported the best we could to convey what happened. Arkansas was in that game late in the first half, 2-possession game. Arkansas didn't look very good, but they were right there. Texas gets a little 5-0 run, little flurry right before halftime to build that lead to 10, double digits. Arkansas didn't respond well in the second half. It snowballed and it got ugly. This team has wasted no time on that against Creighton. It didn't. It got down by 12 right before halftime. A 6-0 run for Arkansas, cut that lead in half, and then it was game on. I really thought coming in the second half, Arkansas gave itself a great chance to battle back and be in that game, and that's what happened. Talk about heart. You can have all the skill, talent, all these things. It doesn't mean it's going to work well together. And we know Arkansas has struggled in the past getting chemistry right, waiting into December and early January. That's why I think the European tour helped. I think putting that hammer in front of the schedule with Texas was, a brilliant idea by Musselman. He knows what his team needed, and he did that. And so you credit him for that. But we see again tonight, I think, we can oscillate. If Arkansas loses tonight, I think people are going to feel, wow, we're going to have to wait till SEC play, or at least the Oklahoma game to maybe understand where this team is at. You win tonight, and you got some wind in your sails, and I think you leave Maui proud as fans and as a program with what you accomplished. Wouldn't be so bad on the football end if so much Kool-Aid wasn't consumed in the preseason. Arkansas is not as good as it was last year. There's been injuries. We can make excuses. Defensive, we know KJ's been banged up. I predicted in my weekly picks for the Hogville team. We put our picks out. I've got Arkansas winning at Missouri. I may be the only one that picks it. I may be, fooling myself, but that's the one road game I picked in the weekly picks. And I think Arkansas, moves heaven and earth to get that 7th win and give itself a chance for a better bowl and to get to 8 wins. So this is a basketball pregame, and I've turned football, but I wanted to get to that comment. All right, guys, we're 40 minutes into this. We're about a half hour from the game. I'm going to sign off. I was a little clunky tonight on the pregame. We'll do better moving forward because it won't be the last. And certainly postgame, that's where we need to bring it. We need the Hogs to bring it in the game, and then postgame, we need to be ready to respond in kind. So again, Hogvillenet YouTube Live. Go to hogville.net and check out all the content by an outstanding staff. To me, second to none. Whatever sport you like, it's there. And let's see. Enjoyed it, Kev. Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, guys, signing off. I'll see you later tonight. It's going to be, look, we may be breaking in Turkey Day together officially. The game could end between 11:30. I'm long-winded, so the U2 Live might just drift into past midnight. Now we're having Turkey Day together somewhat, before you go to bed. Hopefully you'll come back that late. I know it's late, but again, if you're not drilled in with this Razorback basketball team, just dialed in for every minute, you're missing something because we may not see a roster like this for a while. As good as Musselman is recruiting, getting 3 5-stars in one class, what he's done in the portal, and having 5 guys projected to the NBA draft, that's unheard of at Arkansas. And you can't count on that every year. And I think we talked about that tough schedule. These are the kind of matchups you want. And this is the kind of season you want to watch every minute. So I hope you stay up late, come back and join me late. Let's have more fun with it. See you then.